We're going to consider the nature of a good education, what is called a liberal education. Imagine, if you would, for a moment, that you were acquainted with the liveliest, the deepest thinking people who have ever existed. Imagine a dinner party that you're holding, and you've invited to that dinner party those people, the deepest thinkers. Can you imagine what the conversation would sound like? It'd be animated, it would be deep. They'd be talking about topics such as love or justice in whatever society they happen to have lived in, or justice in the absolute sense. They talk about how life can be most fully enjoyed. And there'd be laughter there, and quiet. They talk about the deepest mysteries of life. They'd propose to each other intriguing puzzles that the greatest minds of our civilization have ever worked on. They'd talk about what was worth dying for, or what was worth living for. To be a part of that conversation, that party, is what a good education invites you to. As I was surfing the channels a couple of weeks ago, I saw almost the opposite of that. A host was sitting there with a beautiful, luscious starlet, and he crossed his legs and looked at and put his hand up there and looked at her and said, "Well, I want to hear all the dirt." And he was asking about her current lover or boyfriend or whatever else, and was asking her, "Oh, do you think he's sexy?" A good education, to listen to the deepest thinkers in the world that have ever existed that we know of, is almost the opposite of that fatuous host asking the silly questions that he did. There are times maybe to be silly. I mean, I could put on the hat and, you know, have fun, and I do have fun at times. By the way, this is my hat. It's got my name on it. But there are other times in which you want to take hold of what has been called the great conversation and be a part of it. To hear the music or enjoy the drama, experience the art, understand some of the science, to live the full life. And that's what we're going to be doing. Philosophy is one of the most important subjects of a well-educated person, of any person who walks the earth, who has to make choices and has values. There's three parts to philosophy: the metaphysics, the epistemology, and the ethics. And in this feature, in this section, we want to talk about metaphysics. Metaphysics in philosophy asks the question, where are you? Now, you could answer, I live in, say, Reno. Is that your best answer, or United States, or the universe? But the nature of the universe as a whole, that's metaphysics. The nature of the universe as a whole. Metaphysics asks the question of this universe, where you are, is it consistent? Is the universe reliable? When you test it, will you have the same results each time under the same conditions? Or more importantly, is the universe knowable by us? Can humans really know the universe we live in? That's the questions that metaphysics might ask. The topics might be the question of, are there absolutes in this universe? That's a metaphysical question. Metaphysics might talk about life, what's it mean, or man in this universe, or the idea of time. That's part of the universe, the nature of existence, or of God, or of consciousness. What's it mean? Alan Wheelis wrote in the book called The Desert, his sort of feeling, it seems like, or one possible feeling for what his metaphysics was. He wrote, "I listen, hear nothing. Remember the stillness on the mountain. Look down through the leather of my shoes to my feet, toenails twisted by fungus, through the wool of trousers to white hairy legs, knobby knees, wrinkled organs of shame and love and excrement, momentary configurations of energy in patternless clay, and what else? A book, a few psychiatric papers, some scraps of research, a few faggots of meaning tied by a fraying cord, soon to be ashes." This is one view of the nature of the universe. A world filled with just illusions and meaninglessness. There are many other ways of expressing one's metaphysics. And the question for philosophy will be, what is your metaphysics? You know, good campuses of good universities have three things. They have classrooms and tennis courts and chapels, corresponding to the intellectual development, the physical development, health, and the spiritual development of its people on campus. Health is one aspect. I've known people that haven't had good health, and it sure makes a difference in their lives. I wouldn't elect to do that unless I wouldn't elect to do that. In Whitmer's Total Guide to Total Wellness, he wrote, "Of the negative lifestyles, distress is probably speeds up the aging process more than any other. The body was not designed to withstand the constant damage that is caused by the bomb of distress." Night, everybody. War, famine, pestilence, disease, hunger, death, and hell. The four horsemen of the apocalypse bring such woe. War. In this century, probably over 200 million people have been killed in war. 200 million. What causes it? What brings it about? It's not enough just to be against it. There is some sight to be seen that will take the black shroud of war from our face of our earth. Its science is Irenology. Irenology, Irene, the goddess of peace, from the Greeks. Academic departments exist. Journals, scientific organizations. It has been studied by more than those that think with their glands. And there are results. We know. We know. The 20th century has been filled with blood and violence. Wars. The Hitlers, the Stalins, the Pol Pots, the Idi Amins. But in the 20th century, there has been no war between two democratic free nations. Never. Not at all. Not at all. You never were told that. Think about it. America didn't fight Canada. Science has conquered smallpox with thought and study. Irenology, the study of peace, has things to say to the well-educated person. The more freedom a state, a nation has, the less violence its citizens experience, both inside its borders and with foreign entities. Political rights, economic freedom, civil liberties mean something in terms of war. A market economy of freedom between adults freely trading without force or fraud versus the government control that many of the nations of this world have. Civil liberties to protect the individual against the encroachments of government. If we have political and market and economic liberties, we shall not have the war. Look who's fighting nowadays. Read the paper and see the wars. You want to stop war? Freedom and liberty are the paths. Many of us have heard how the SAT scores, the Scholastic Aptitude Test scores from our high school kids have been dropping. William J. Bennett publication entitled The Index of Leading Cultural Indicators has a graph about what SAT scores have done. In the last 30 years, they've dropped nearly 30%. No. In the last 30 years, they've dropped nearly 80 points. But did you know that the SAT scores are being scored differently now than they were in previous years? If you took the exam in 1960 and took the exam in 1992, your scores wouldn't be the same. The 1992 scores would be somewhere between 18 and 30 points higher. I would guess that this is to hide the real drop that has occurred in SAT scores. So the real drop is much greater than what this graph shows. Our schools are not teaching the way they used to. The Christian Science Monitor reports that the math abilities of our children versus the children in 16 other developed nations, that the United States children, our kids, come out 15th place, right near rock bottom in math ability. Virtually every other developed nation beats us. Take a look at high school kids pouring out of our local government high schools after the school day is over. It's early afternoon, they don't work all day long. And how many of them, go look, how many of them are carrying 3 or 4 textbooks, ready to do some serious homework in the afternoon and evening? Massachusetts Institute of Technology, MIT, that's one of the top flight places to go if you want to major in mathematics or physics or chemistry any of the hard sciences. And they administer at MIT an entrance examination to all the incoming freshmen to find out where they're at. Now these kids are the ones who have got the grades, the recommendations, the whole business to prove that they belong at MIT, at the top universities. But according to MIT, in Science magazine, many of the students were deficient in algebra, plane geometry, trigonometry, logs, and exponentials, end quote. But that's just plain old high school math. And those are supposed to be our top flight kids. So, my daughter was at Taco Bell. My daughter Jill was at Taco Bell a couple of weeks ago. And she told me a story. There were 3 teenage girls standing behind her in line. And she could hear them talking with each other, and the fact that they were complaining that their parents didn't let them drive indicates that they were probably around 16 years of age. One of the girls turns to Jill and asks for the time. And my daughter Jill says, 4:15. The girl returned to her friends, not understanding what 4:15 meant. One of her friends suggested, oh, 4:15, quarter, that must be 4:25. Her other friend suggested 4:40. Tell me, our educational system in our government-run schools is working just fine. I need a big laugh.